camera off, you can see the buffering logo because
Oh,
it's just
I
like another
see.
participant, but
Okay.
like it'll get bumped all the way to the back anyway.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Hey, everybody.
Hey, I don't
Super
see anybody yet.
excited. Oh, I just see the attendees number just like going up.
Really? I don't see
Yeah,
anything.
at the bottom. No, it's just
Nothing.
rising. It's freaking me
Oh,
out. No pressure.
you'll be fine. I've done
Yeah,
this before. It's fine.
we're fine.
Okay, I see the panelists. I can see, but I can't see the attendees. Okay.
Wait, you
Go.
disappeared.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the
Oh, I see.
participants. Yeah, so I have panelists, but I can't actually see the attendees. So
No, yeah, I can't see like who's here.
okay, that makes sense. I was like, wait, am I missing something? Why is my Kindle at 15%? I don't understand.
Mac, what shade of lipstick are you wearing?
You know what? I don't know. It's Rihanna though. It's like one of hers, and it's like a dark
Oh,
blue one.
Fenty? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Nice.
made peace with the fact that Fenty is how my life is gonna go.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that lately too. I don't have any Fenty, but I was like, I should really get some
Well,
Fenty.
because
Why
I
don't I have
love a good
any
matte,
Fenty?
and she does matte
Mm.
better than anybody. So, and also like you can find your exact shade.
Yeah.
Of course, my ring light decides to stop working. Like, why? Oh, Scotland. Hi, Scotland.
Hi, Scotland and England.
What time is it, y'all, over there?
I feel like it's like 7. Yeah, there we go. It's
7.
7.
Why do you know that it's 7?
Oh,
Hey,
Sweden and
Sweden?
Sierra Leone. Wow.
Sierra
Don't
Leone?
travel.
Yo,
Hi,
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Hey.
Bradford,
Bradford.
England.
Okay, all I know about Bradford is
This is
that
so
that's where Zayn
fun.
Malik is from. Sorry about it. That is my knowledge of Bradford. He's incredibly good looking. Wait, is MA Massachusetts?
Hey, California.
Hey, I'm from Cali, so it's fine. We're not boring.
It's not boring when you live in Montreal and it's
Ooh,
like minus
Curry.
17 outside Celsius.
Albuquerque. I've been in Albuquerque's airport.
I love this. Hi, everybody. It's a nice airport. Somebody said it's a
It is
nice
a nice
airport.
Oh, hey DC. I hope you're recovered from the treason.
Oh, God. Oh, hi from Quebec.
Quebec.
Izzy.
All I know about Seattle is
Thank you,
that's where
airport.
Grey's Anatomy is.
Toronto. That's where I was born. I was born in Toronto. Represent. I just want to tell everybody that in Montreal right now, it feels like it's minus 12, but it feels like minus 22 Celsius.
Okay,
I'm
no,
gonna put
I
that
don't
into
understand minus
I'm,
numbers.
I'm gonna put that
No.
into Fahrenheit for everybody, so everybody has an idea of it's like super sunny, but it's minus 7.6 degrees Fahrenheit, Mac.
No. I refuse. I'm done. I'm over it. We're not. No. Okay, look, I'm telling you, like I I have heat on and hoodies on when it's like 60 degrees. I don't do this.
That means nothing to me, but I get it. I understand. This is too cold. All right, should we start, Mac? You think?
I think so. I'm gonna click off real quick and see how many people we have here. participants.
50. We have 50.
We have 47. Yeah, I think that's like a
4,
lot of people, and other people
4
will filter
degrees
in if they need
is
to.
balmy. Yeah, they will. And 4 degrees is balmy when it's +1 in the winter in Montreal, where like it's summer. It's tropical
No,
weather.
I don't know what to do with that even. All right, hi everybody. So I'm Mack. Most of y'all should know. Well, I'm not gonna say should. Most of you probably know me. So I'm gonna say. But yeah, I
And
consult
I'm
for buffering, and I've done a whole bunch of panels. I've done 2 of the reading groups. I've done a couple of lives, and you all have seen and heard my big opinions on both the podcast and just on the internet. And who are you, other panelists?
I'm Alba, and I'm a producer here at Buffering the Vampire Slayer. And if you listen to the podcast, or if you're up to date, you've probably heard me do some interviews with Sharon Ferguson or with Jack a couple episodes ago on All the Way. And Chris and I talk and we prepare the episodes together, and that's what I do. Make sure the white supremacy jingle's in the right place.
And today what we're going to do is, so a lot of you probably listen to our podcast episode about invisibility in the world of Buffy. But also we're just going to elaborate on some of those points. We're going to answer further questions to the best of our ability. I know on the website there's like 3, maybe 4 articles about invisibility in media. I'm also probably going to throw some other things your way. But basic housekeeping, I think we're going to go through our points, and then we'll like go through the questions we already have, and then the other questions that have come in. And Kristen's going to be monitoring the chat for questions, and I think you can still email them as well. If that's wrong, Kristen, just drop that into the box. There you go, Airtable.
There,
Kristen is
the form is
comments.
there.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. That's our basic schedule. Preset questions that came in, and then questions that y'all have along the way. So if you need clarifying questions, drop those in there. Okay, I think that's it for housekeeping.
Sounds good.
So what is our first preset question?
So I think we could talk about how can we enjoy media while still knowing it's problematic. It's a tough question, honestly, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, the answer is like, look, everything is problematic. I know we joke about that, but once upon a time, because I'm old, there was a live journal called Your Fave is Problematic. And it would literally just list like, here's the Jonas Brothers and why they're problematic. Here's whatever and why they're problematic. And so the idea is just you have to be an informed consumer of media. Like you cannot passively consume it. So I think as long as you're aware that like, you know, Saved by the Bell is like maybe not the best example of anything, you can still watch it and laugh. I still love that show. I also am aware that Zach Morris is trash. Like, fine. As long as you're not going, yes, this is how the world works. This is how people really are, and you aren't judging real life people and situations by what happens on the screen. You know, and like there are some major ones where like I think we've all decided we're kind of not going to watch any more Tarantino. That's also fine. Like, you know,
yeah,
I think anything that's, oh God, who's the creepy one who married his adopted daughter? Woody Allen. I think we've all agreed we're probably not watching more Woody Allen. But like, if you really like Annie Hall, that's fine. Like, you didn't know, now you know, you can watch it. It's fine. That's my take on it.
I think also keeping in mind who created it and who funded it. So then like everyone has a particular opinion and like version of the world, and whoever made that is going to have their own distinct opinion, and so their background is going to influence that, and understanding that background, understanding where that person comes from, will help kind of decipher what kind of lens you're looking at, what lens you should look at things through, and then have an opinion based on that. You know, like we love Buffy, we talk about Buffy, but we know that Buffy was made by like a problematic white guy. You know, that's what it is. So we can assess it, like analyze it, and enjoy the good parts, because there are good parts and there are progressive parts, and there are like things that we each have taken into our lives and carried forward with us. Like Buffy's such an integral part of who I am, but knowing that Joss isn't going to be able to really represent my version of the world, and that, you know, to look for media created by the people that you want to learn from, and to create space for media for people who necessarily don't often have that. Like look for Black creators, look for Hispanic creators, look for Asian creators, like watch content made by the people represented in that content is a good way to kind of get educated. And, you know, those people are still going to be problematic, but everything
So
in its own
problematic.
context. Mm-hmm.
Also, the thing I too want to add is specifically look at the writers. So one of my favorite people in the world works in the writers' room for Good Trouble. And the cool part about Good Trouble is, so if you don't know Good Trouble, it's a spinoff of the show The Fosters. So the two daughters from the Fosters moved to LA. One's in tech, one's working to be a lawyer. And their writers' room has all sorts of people, ages, gender expression, sexual orientation, race, whole thing. So like, I don't necessarily like Good Trouble. Like, it is not my jam, but I watch it because the writers are very diverse. You know, Criminal Minds is not a show that I watch anymore. I love it dearly, but I know there was like one female writer of color because she was in my sorority. So I watched the episodes that she worked on, and then I watched the one episode where she was the head writer and like wrote the episode. So I think that's really important too. It's like showing people who with the money that like we are watching the shows where the writer's room is reflective of the world, real world of the world that they're writing about. And also that we're just supporting mostly young, underpaid writers of color at this point. So sometimes just watch the thing that's terrible because you're supporting people.
Absolutely.
And actually the first point that we wanted to make that we like skipped over was like for like people of color, so Black and Indigenous people of color, like if you think there's something hinky and like an erasure is happening, you're probably right. So like go into this conversation and like the exploration of things and go, if it feels hinky, it probably is. Like, don't want to judge Hollywood too harshly. Well, that's a lie, kind of do, but yeah, if something feels off, it probably is off. That's like a note for everybody, but very specifically people of color, you can sometimes feel really gaslighted. I assure you, there probably some form of erasure is happening.
Yeah,
So
or
that was
exploitation.
like
We also talked about exploitation too, and that if you feel like someone isn't being represented properly, it's probably because they're not, and it's probably because that person wasn't written by. Weren't we talking about a show the other day about this, Mac?
Was it Never Have I Ever?
No.
I'm sure we'll think of it.
Yeah, it'll come up at some point. But the point is that a lot of representation of people of color is often not written by people of color.
Yeah.
And that creates issues. That creates big problems. And so, yeah, again, just kind of like a point to add on to the previous point that's another thing to keep in mind.
All right, and so our second point is the big one. So this is the one that had like the most reaction both.
Yeah, and just heads up
on my social media, like in my DMs. Yeah, this is spoilers. Full of spoilers.
Spoilers for season 7, 6 and 7. So
it's a major spoiler. Like if you gotta mute yourself or step out, I don't know. But Kennedy. So y'all have some real big feelings about Kennedy.
People have big feelings about Kennedy.
And we need to talk about why. So like what is the problem with Kennedy? And what are the real reasons that you don't like her? Because a lot of people have this very specific Kennedy narrative. It was too soon after Tara. And she was just like so either smug or aggressive or like a lot of very negative words in comparison to Spike, who kills people. I have questions why we're so upset about her.
Buffy. Yeah. And Angel and even, I mean, people hate Riley, but like I feel like he's more liked than Kennedy is.
Yeah, I mean, we even got over Willow tried to end the world What? And some of you are probably going, hey, wait, she's a terrible character, but we have to look at why this specific terrible character in a series full of terrible characters, because Buffy's not that great all the time. Why we dislike Kennedy so much, and this is gonna hurt people's feelings. Y'all don't like her because she's not Tara. She's the opposite of Tara. Tara is shy and meek and sweet, and Kennedy knows what she wants, and she goes for it, and she's not nice and kind and does not necessarily mince her words.
Mm.
And she's a
And she
brown
goes
person
for what
doing
she
all of those
wants.
things.
Yeah, she goes for what she wants.
Yeah, like I've never seen her put Willow in an uncomfortable sexual situation. Whereas one of the most interesting scenes I've ever seen that people reference loving is Spike and Buffy on the catwalk at the Bronze, which is like the most uncomfortable scene. But like people talk about how great it is, and I'm like, Kennedy never did that, and y'all still hate her.
And also just for
But
people who haven't seen up to season 7 but are like cool with being spoiled, Kennedy is Willow's new girlfriend after Tara dies in season 6. So yeah, and she's of Latina descent, and she's like wealthy. She in the show, she's supposed to be like quite wealthy, and she kind of like really pursues Willow, and they start dating, and they date for like the rest of the series and into the comics.
yeah, and one of the things too, like I obviously have a lot of feelings about it, but we also have to keep in mind that like every character of color on that show is written to be unlikable, starting with Kendra, not Ken, yeah, Kendra.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they both have K names and everyone hates them? We need to investigate that. But Kendra's written to be unlikable. She's written to be the opposite of Buffy. She's uptight. She follows all of the rules. She has a structure. The same way that Kennedy is written to be the exact opposite. She's brown, and she's aggressive, and she's confident, and she has money, because you remember Tara's an orphan. She's literally written to be the opposite of the girl that everyone believes is Willow's one true love, and she's brown. And like we have to understand that we have been trained overall, but in this show specifically, brown and black people are unlikable. They don't become part of the group. They're not accepted.
Yeah, they're untrustworthy, and I think it would be more like we could kind of justify disliking her more based on her qualities if there were different representations of people of color, if there were like positive representations of people of color and they were likable and they were really incorporated into the group and they were welcomed in, then we could start to break that down a bit more. But because there just isn't that diversity of representation of the people of color within the show, then yeah, it's really easy to be like, I hate that character because of this. But when there's a pattern, then there's something deeper to look at, and we have to just know that that's we're being told something as an audience. We're being told
I always say
something.
if you immediately dislike a character, especially one of color, you have to stop and think about why. Because there's some sort of cue. Yeah, like there's something encoded in a narrative that has taught you that this particular character is bad or wrong or the bad guy. Like one of the conversations that we actually had was, everybody loves a Spike, Loki, Damon from Vampire Diaries. I cannot name a single black male character from a TV show. We have one in movies, but in a TV show who's the bad guy that we love, that like has fan art and we're obsessed with. I mean, hell, Kylo Ren, who's like an incel essentially, everybody is in love with, and like everyone was thrilled that he was with Rey. But we don't have the equivalent with a black man or a Latino man or a Southeast Asian. Like we don't have that, and we have to think about why. Like why are we not cued to look past bad qualities in love interests of color? But like we will literally set Loki up as like our dream man. I mean, yes, it's Tom Hiddleston, but like but yeah, like, and we have to talk about love interests of color. Like there aren't. People of color really get to be in love with anyone. Like in the whole run of Buffy, no one dated a person of color. Like not a single date.
Xander went on a date with Ashanti.
Okay, that's fair. One.
But then she tried
in 7 years.
Yeah, and then she tried to kill him. So
Exactly.
and then Faith and Wood sleep together.
That's true. So that runs, but we also have the conversation of Faith as the
right,
black lady.
coded as black. Yeah.
Yeah. So like again, and that's also something you have to pay attention to. Anytime there is one character of color that's part of a main cast, anytime a new character that's of the same color shows up, that will be their love interest.
Yeah, that's their love interest.
Like that's how
I was always really upset in Veronica Mars that Veronica and what's his name again? He's so cute. Her best friend. Oh, okay. Well, Wallace, thank you.
Wallace.
Thank you. Well, that they don't date. They have like such good chemistry, and they could have easily dated, and it was like, I don't know. I think that would have been a cute thing.
But he wasn't Logan Echolls.
I know. That was like the spiciest on-screen chemistry I have ever seen, though. Damn.
Like that was
a lot.
Like look, we're gonna take a quick sidebar. Veronica Mars, their first kiss is something that like I occasionally go back to watch on YouTube just to be like, oh right, there's love in the world.
There's passion.
Right? Marcel from the originals is an interesting character in that we're in a city. We're in New Orleans in the originals. So a bunch of white people show up to New Orleans.
I haven't seen the originals. Is it
and
good?
like the bad guy is the black guy in the blackest city that we have. So like I appreciate that we like him, but like we should because that's his kingdom, right? Like so but he doesn't have the following that Damon has. Like there is no fan fiction about him. Like there are no posters, there's no fan cons. Like he exists and he's hot, but not the fever pitch of Damon or Spike or any of those folks.
Yeah, and I think it's a reflection on society too, where like people of color are not allowed to be flawed in any way, because then you're dislikable and you're unlikable, sorry, and you're just not you're not allowed to be part of society if you have any kind of flaw. And we don't treat where did Mack go? Anyway, we don't treat white people the same way. We just don't. Am I still here? Is everybody still with me? Mack? Okay, cool. Thanks, Bree. Mack, where'd you go? I'm gonna wait for her to come back. It is very cozy, but my roommate made this sweater by hand. I'm wearing a Chloe original, as we call them in our house. Sorry. Okay. Did you hear what I said?
No. So also other people who've been on any of these panels with me, I drop off at least once a panel because that's how the internet works. For me.
Because internet. Yay.
Yeah, characters of color are not allowed to be flawed.
Exactly. And I was just saying that it's just a reflection of also society that people of color are not allowed to be flawed, because then you're not allowed to participate in society or be like accepted, really. And it's really frustrating. So there's like this standard of perfection that is unattainable.
Yeah, like there's the example I always like to use is Marvel. So fun fact, there's not before Black Panther, there's not a single black main character. So every single black man, because we didn't have any women, was the sidekick to one of the main stars. Heimdall, and he just sort of followed Thor's lead. Rhodey was only like relevant because he was Tony Stark's best friend. Falcon is Cap's third sidekick. And they're all perfect. They're all super good, you know? None of them are like Tony Stark. Like a black Tony Stark would never fly, like ever. Like
no, but why not? That would be great,
right? It would never fly. I think it would be great. Yeah. I mean, I'm obsessed with the fact that he's not the smartest person in the Marvel universe. Shuri is, so. But, yeah.
Somebody
So there
said
was a
that
second question. Keep
somebody
going.
said that they think that Trick has a lot in common with Spike, being very good looking, charismatic, and stylish, but of course he didn't get to stick around. That's Rowena Knight said that. And that's a really good point. Like, we couldn't like Trick. Why not? He could have been portrayed as like really hot and desirable, but he wasn't.
Yeah, I think the closest we maybe come is not even a bad character, but just a character in general. I think Gunn, spoiler for Angel, the character of Gunn, I think he's probably the closest that we get of like a truly just like, he's good looking. He just is. And not even like
He's
90s good looking. Like he would
beautiful.
so there's
Yeah, no,
also a question
just universally good looking.
about Faith that right about like thinking that they should have replaced Kennedy with Faith as Willow's love interest. You and the entirety of the internet at the time, we had entire GeoCity pages devoted to Willow and Faith fanfiction. They were like writing, like people were like, why didn't these two get together? Like that would be the most logical like, progression of people, right? Two people who are known for going too far into the darkness, but like coming back, right? I think those are two characters that are the most similar, that had the most similar road, really. It would have been fairly interesting, but Joss doesn't think like that, and the writers' room at that point didn't think like that. So we got Kennedy. I'm not mad about it. There is a fun story though. So the reason why we didn't get Tara was simply scheduling. Initially, what was supposed to happen was Tara was supposed to come back because magic. And Amber Benson just couldn't make the schedule work. So then I think Joss was like, okay, new plan. So that's the thing.
Mm-hmm. I also want to address like that Kennedy was sexually aggressive and triggering, and like you talked about that a little bit, but there's also a really, really big through line in society and media that Black and brown people and people of color, well, not all people of color, but Black and brown people specifically, are sexually dangerous, and that they're more dangerous than white people. Do you know what I'm talking about, Mac? Like Black men are seen as more predatory than white men.
Yeah. So there's a really so there's a interesting post, there you go, that's what I'm looking for, on Instagram about adultification. So it often happens to Black girls, and there's a whole book about it, but we view Black girls, and I'm going to say by that extension girls of color, as much older than they are, and much more sexually experienced than they are. And that's like a factual scientific thing. Like they did a study where like, if you're not white and you're a girl, you are seen as older, and little, like I think the markers were people see them as older, less in need of care, more sexually knowledgeable, and like promiscuous. So like you are hardwired to look at Kennedy and the way that she behaves and go, that's aggressive. I'm gonna bring it back to Spike and Buffy. And again, Kennedy is written in opposition to Tara, who was gentle and shy and would never pursue Tara or Willow in that manner, but Kennedy did. It's the same thing with. Okay, go ahead.
And also how Willow was portrayed from the beginning of the show as very innocent and virginal and unaware of her own sexuality until much later. And that's also very, like, it's a very typical kind of innocent white girl being, I don't know, like that, I don't know if I can articulate this properly. Maybe you can help me out, Mac, but it's the opposite basically of what you were just talking about, like brown and Black girls being as overly promiscuous, and then white girls being as like overly innocent and then wanting to protect and shelter them. So that dynamic together creates an uncomfortable feeling in people.
Yeah, so essentially, white girls are seen as pure and ideal, and a lot of the history of racism is protecting white femininity. There's a lot of very interesting books about that, starting with slavery and how that works. And so whether we want to or not, white girls, especially Willow, who's even after she got super powerful, was still characterized as trying to be as passive and chill and loving as possible. For her to be actively pursued in that manner made people really uncomfortable because people like don't view her that way. But like, why don't we view her that way? Why isn't she not viewed as like a very sexual person, right? As opposed to Kennedy. We have quite a few people who are also going like, we dislike her because she wasn't written well. That's fair, but like you also have to be aware of why she wasn't written well.
Yeah, and we just talked about that too. It's like,
yeah, someone just dropped in the chat and actually managed to read it. Yeah, they said that Kennedy is written as coming from a wealthy family and accustomed to getting what she wants. Right. Buffy is similar in that she's accustomed to getting what she wants, right? She always manages to beat the system, whether it's fairly or not. And that's not a quality that we dislike in Buffy, who's our main blonde lead protagonist. So I think like there are valid reasons, quotation marks, for disliking Kennedy, but you have to understand that those are all rooted in race, all of them, because it's written by a white man who by this point in the narrative has just proven that he cannot do this. He cannot write these characters.
Well, white men and
white
women
from that place.
Like it's not just Joss. It's also white women who obviously
that's fair.
Don't know what it's like to be a white, as much as we love Marty Noxon and Jane Espenson, and they played parts.
He specifically had a hand in the like. No, there's one specific episode that I will, by the end of this, remember what it is, where like she's pursuing Willow, and it is so specifically Joss Whedon, and that is why like the exchange is so uncomfortable. I was like, this is Joss Whedon. This is clearly him writing. And later in some interview, someone was like, yeah, Joss like wrote that episode. I was like, yeah, that explains it.
Yes, Kennedy was written as Latinx.
Yeah. So I think
there's an episode about it. She's mentioned as Latinx. Okay. Let's move on.
We were also talking about chemistry with actors, and look, if Allison Hannigan can create chemistry with Jason Segel for like 87 seasons of How I Met Your Mother, I think it might have been the direction and not necessarily the acting. Like, I love Jason Segel as a person, but like Allison Hannigan's a consummate actress. Let's be clear. I think a lot of that was direction because they wrote a bad character and they don't know how to direct people of color other than to be stereotypical and vaguely offensive. Sometimes extremely offensive, but mostly vaguely offensive.
Yeah.
So I think we've thoroughly explained the Kennedy.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Willow being Jewish, Mac? Because we actually did have a conversation about this when we recorded, but it just didn't make it to the final cut because we had to just make it shorter and narrow it down. But we did have a discussion. So Mac, please go ahead, because
I'm obsessed with the fact that we ignore that Willow is Jewish. So it's not just like her last name is Rosenberg, but I would like to point out that Rosenberg, specifically the Rosenbergs, was a very famous trial featuring communists. It was Ethel and I forget what her husband's name is, Rosenberg, were actually convicted of being spies for like Russia or something. So like the fact that he picked that name Rosenberg is very interesting to me. But they specifically say that she's Jewish. Like it's mentioned in at least 2 episodes that she is Jewish, and like they talk about what is it like? It's not Rosh Hashanah. They talk about one specific holiday. Yes, Ethel and Julius.
Somebody said,
I love you.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's their names. Hanukkah. So yeah, she mentioned Hanukkah for like 2 seconds, which, as someone also said, it's not the most important Jewish holiday, like by far. Christians just like to make it Jewish Christmas, and it's not.
Yeah, Christmas. Yeah, for
what
sure.
we also don't talk about is, as someone who is raised Jewish, when she discovers magic, she suddenly becomes this like, she specifically becomes Wiccan, so which is a specific religion. That we don't delve into the fact that it's a very specific religion. It's very much a new age amalgamation kind of thing. But we ignore the fact that like there's a super important witch in Judaism, the Witch of Endor, who actually Saul goes to because he's tried all the regular means of getting some word from God about how to deal with the Philistines, and he goes to the Witch of Endor. So there's canonically a witch with magic powers within the Jewish like faith and it's never mentioned. Like, she never calls on the power of the Witch of Endor when they need to get advice, see the future. Nothing. Yeah, it's not a part of mainstream Judaism, but like Joss Whedon pulled some real in the cut magical things out of thin air. So I always found that really interesting. Also, interestingly enough, weird deep cut Jewish fact. So for a really long time there, Judaism wasn't like you can't believe in more than one God. It's like just don't worship them. So like a huge part of the Jewish Bible, God is at the council of gods and goes, y'all are fucking up. We're not doing this. I'm taking these kids and we're going somewhere else. So it's not that other gods don't exist in Judaism. It's just you're not supposed to worship them. And the fact that like there's all of that interesting magical things and really interesting history that they could have dealt with was like, how do you reckon your childhood religion with having magical powers? Or even the fact that they made her specifically Wiccan and ignored her Jewishness, which is something that had been around forever, and instead gave her this like new age filter through whiteness amalgamation of Wicca, was so interesting to me. Like, also, what does it mean for her as a 16-year-old to suddenly be like, I need to carry a cross with me to be safe? Not her Star of David, not a Hamza. She has to carry a cross. You know, why do we discuss like what does holy water really mean? Is it blessed by a Christian priest? Is it, can a rabbi create holy water? You know, that's so interesting that like we just went, oh, this Jewish girl, she's Jewish, she's definitely Jewish. We mentioned the holiday that we all as non-Jewish people recognize as being Jewish, and never explore it further. Even just like living on a hellmouth, that's like not something specific to Judaism. Like, how does she feel about living on a hellmouth? And that's probably not something that has ever been taught to her in Hebrew school, as someone said. So I just find it so interesting that there was a character that could have added so much depth to the discussion of good versus evil, of life and death, of living on a hellmouth, of how do you fight evil with religion. And we just were like, now we're just going to give her this new age weird white person thing that we threw. Yes, Shadowhunters does have a Jewish vampire. Yes, that is one of the best parts of that show. I'm obsessed with that show. If you ever want to talk, hit me up on social media. I will talk your ear off. I did multiple market researches for that TV show. Multiple. Yeah, so like that writer was like, maybe we should be inclusive of more people. But that didn't happen with Willow. And I find it really interesting that like there was that amount of Jewish erasure. It was like when there was just so much to explore. And so like there's this huge chance and that character's religion was erased in favor of crosses, burning angel, and us all thinking it's funny. Like, I have big feelings.
Yeah, and just like the acceptance that Christianity is like the end all be all in fighting evil, that like you can really only fight evil with Christianity, and that kind of erasure of Judaism, obviously, as well as Jewish, but every other culture, like every other religion that exists in the world, there's like no other kind of influence at all. And I think in general, a big issue with Buffy and a big issue with a lot of media is there's just not a lot of integration, and there's not a lot of holistic kind of I like holistic is maybe not the best word, but just like integrating different pieces of culture of people who exist in the cultures that are being represented. And so it's just like flat as like Christian, white, and that's it, and nobody else really matters. And that's what you're being told watching the show, is like the only thing that matters is to be white and Christian.
Yeah, one of those interesting things too is like for all the magic that they use, I've never seen them use a pinnacle to repel people. I was like, wait, wouldn't that, in theory, shouldn't that be able to repel a vampire? But no.
And yeah, the integration
so that was
of Christianity,
that's my spiel.
Yeah. And
on Willow. I can talk more about that later on something else, I assure you.
The integration of Christianity is very superficial and instrumental. And that kind of goes to show like who are we following, which society are we following, and like how much do we even reflect on what we're putting out there, how much are we reflecting on what we're using to convey a message. So it's because Christianity is just understood as the main religion of the Americas, and like the Western world, really. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really funny. So actually somebody Lanta posted the question about Willow's Jewishness, which I think is very funny. I love that Lanta, that you asked that, because I 100% like, it was like in the podcast, it's like me on a tangent at the end being like, hold on, we got to talk about Willow and her Jewishness. So I appreciate that somebody else was like peeped that. So we also want to talk about, before we get to like everyone else's like submitted questions, which I'm very excited about. How do you look for and find invisibility in other sources of media? So my favorite thing about this is, think about the setting. Like, think about the setting of the show. Uh,
Yeah, where is it?
so
Like Friends in New York.
yeah, so yeah, Friends is a great one. Girls also. How are you in New York
Girls,
City
yeah.
and there's not a single like Puerto Rican? Like,
Yeah.
what? Sex in the City as well.
Yeah.
They did have
Sex and the
characters of
City.
color, but they were often caricatures, whereas girls had zero until we literally were like, you have no people of color.
Yeah.
Sex and the City at least included them. That show is still trash, but like, they had them. And also, whose perspective is the show written is another good way to sort of figure out where invisibility is. So also in movies, so there's like a really interesting like white savior movie. So they have them like Dangerous Minds, which was Annie Potts in the 90s, Freedom Writers, which was Hilary Swank in the 2000s. I auditioned for that movie. And the narrative is often white female teachers coming into inner city neighborhoods and fixing these kids. But if you look at these films, you're like, oh, there's lots of kids of color. But when you look at them, they're one-dimensional stereotypes. Or get into it. The Latina girl's dad is like black boys in a gang, and that's his biggest problem. And it's like, I promise you, there's rich cultural lives outside of those narratives, right? So that's erasure. Like, they're on the screen, but identities are being erased. We don't discuss, what are your holiday traditions? What is your motivation? Like, what? Like, none of that. Like, it's about this woman coming in to save them. In both of those narratives.
And that
also,
really
like,
tells
in TV,
you.
Always Be My Maybe.
Go ahead, Mack. Finish your thought.
So I was gonna say, like, also in like not Always Be My Maybe, but in Crazy Rich Asians, which we're gonna come to for another point later. If you are like relatively knowledgeable, which most people aren't, about like the dynamic between mainland Chinese people with lots of money and how they move through like the Southeast Asia, there's a lot of erasure of people and indigenous people there, and the people who actually like make things move. But it doesn't exist in Crazy Rich Asians, not even in the novels, but especially not in the movies. But you have to think about the setting, right? If you think about the setting, these people with lots of money are coming into these other countries with no money. If you think about it in that context, it's very clear that something's obviously missing, right? So it's like, you got to look at the setting, like, where are you and who are the players?
And often I think I feel like it's very easy for me to know who the target audience is for different movies. Like when you watch the promos and when you watch, or you just see how things are framed, and you're like, oh, that's not made for people of color, that's made for white people consumption, or for whatever. And so like being aware of that and understanding, like we said, what is the setting? We talked about who wrote it, who funded it, where is it made, and then like who is the target audience are really important things in understanding who will be erased, what cultures are going to be erased, religions, and what's going to be misrepresented, just misrepresented or exploited.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples for this is actually the world of action movies. So you have like the Expendables and the Marvel movies and Resident Evil, but like one of the top grossing of all time franchises is the Fast and the Furious, and people like to make fun of it, right? They're like, oh, it's silly and the cars do things. But at the core of it, most people will tell you, you come back because of the family that was created. And they're And there are very specific themes that are very much rooted in people of color. So they're a vague descent, is what I like to say, because he's not Vin Diesel, but like his first movie was called Multifacial, and it was about him going to different auditions as different races, like saying he was black, which he is, and white in some of them, and I think he's something else too. And like, so that was his first movie. So like he is of really vague ethnic background. But the whole premise is like they're a family in East Los Angeles. The store in the first movie is real. And it's about taking in every stray that they find. It's this amalgamation of racers, which is a very, like, it's something people of color do. Everyone will take in somebody. The neighborhood kids, someone's grandmother will always feed you if you walk in the door. And that's exactly what that story is based on. And throughout every movie iteration, there's a new stray that gets taken in. And they're almost all people of color. For the first 3 movies, it's like just Paul Walker. He is our lone white dude. That's it. And even as they progress, like the new people added, there's never like a new white person added to the crew. Like they'll work with government officials. And like that's so, like that is the one action film that does not erase color. Like Roman is hood. You know, Suki is my favorite character. You know, Suki is super Asian and her car reflects that. Like that's a show, that's like a franchise that didn't shy away from race. It didn't go, we're gonna have a bunch of people of color, but they're gonna like check mark all of the sort of white stereotypes. They're super real about who becomes part of their family. I mean, our most beloved character, you know, we loved him so much that even though he died, we brought him back. Like, so
Are you talking about Buffy?
No, Fast and Furious. So there's a character that was so beloved, they fucked with the timeline to bring him back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's a
I
character
haven't seen any of them, so I'm just like chilling here.
Okay, so first of all, everybody needs to see them. Everybody needs to see the Fast and Furious movies.
I think
maybe I'll do a watch along. I might hold like a watch along.
Okay. That's Kristen.
I love Kristen. Kristen's like watch all of them. So yeah, like that's a really good one as an example of like how to spot things. So I think so we have like 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna do my best to skip our points that we were gonna do, and then we're gonna do our last point. So Faith landing on her feet versus Buffy being caught. We said that, and a couple of people, more than a few people, were like, oh my god, I've never thought about that. Yeah, so again, Faith, coded as black, always has a plan. Like, have you noticed this girl always has a plan? You know,
she's always gonna take care of herself.
Yeah, so like, you know, her origin's not that great. I feel like this backstory is like her mom was super not great and they lived in Southie Boston. In theory, that's not her accent, but whatever. And she survives that. And then she becomes a slayer and that goes sideways and she discovers there's another slayer. And so her plan, great, I'm going to go towards help. I'm going to go towards where there's another watcher. There's another slayer. Because again, she's a 15-year-old girl at this point. She might be 16 by the time she gets to Buffy, but she's called at 15. And she's fine, right? She gets to town and Buffy and them disown her and she goes, great, fine. She found the mayor to make sure she was taken care of. She always has a plan. Buffy never has a fucking plan. Everybody else has a plan.
And also, I think we talked about this. I think this was discussed. But like, I just realized that in like Giles should probably be paying for Buffy as a ward in season 6. You know, he should be like helping her so that she can just like live because that's her job and he gets paid. So why was Faith living in such? Why was she living in a motel? Like Giles should have had she should have been living with Giles. Because so many watchers, like so many slayers live with their watcher. What the hell? I just realized that.
But again, adultification of black girls, right? She should be able to take care of herself, right?
Oh,
she's
absolutely,
a 15-year-old slayer.
Absolutely. And she's made it this far. And she's probably too proud to accept help. No, for sure. I don't know why Joyce didn't take Faith. I don't know. Truly, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the adults in that world are very questionable. I will say spoilers, extreme spoilers for the comic book. Spoilers.
Oh, I'm going to mute you.
Yeah. Mute. Are you good?
I muted myself. Oh no, it's fine. Just go ahead.
Just want to take your earbud out. Just take your earbud out real quick. I'll give you a thumbs up when the spoiler's over. Okay, great. So in the comic books, eventually Giles dies. He is an old man. But he leaves everything to Faith. And I think that's interesting because I think for the first time, she is taken care of. Giles makes good and actually takes care of her in the end. Would like to just make that point. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that Alba's back, we're not going to talk about that point, but I think that's a very interesting thing to note. Okay, so so I think we covered that, like the idea of, Faith as a coded black, always the plan, and Buffy's always caught. My favorite one is the example of when they have to go deal with like the initiative. The plan is Willow's. It is her spell, her plan. She works out how to set it up. She, makes sure that she has Xander and Giles with her. Buffy just runs headfirst into taking these guys on. And same thing with, despite Buffy coming up with the idea, spoiler for what happens at the end of season 7, Buffy's not actually the one that does it. It requires Willow to potentially die, basically, for that plan to work, right? In the end, she has to pass on the baton to Faith in some capacity. Like, it's never actually Buffy. Yeah, someone just said Buffy's plan is Willow. That is actually very true. From the Angel situation right on down the line, the plan is Willow.
Yeah, the plan is
with
Willow.
Some Xander, there's like a sprinkle of Xander having some odd skill in the moment. So I think that's all of ours. And then we covered Lanta's. There's a non-one.
I wanna address
that is also about Jewishness.
Something that Gabby said about thinking about Faith versus Buffy and the sense of security versus safety. And so I think that the question here is kind of explaining the difference of safety versus security. And so when you look at like the two Slayers, they're confronted with the same obstacles, like the same danger of being on the hellmouth of being Slayers. And so they have the same task to kind of overcome. But Buffy has it with the cushion of friends, Watcher, her mom, a really big house, her own room, like knowing there's always going to be food. She doesn't have to worry about paying for things, where Faith doesn't have that security. So Buffy's like physical life is always in danger, but her kind of stability in the way she moves through life, or her home life, is pretty solid, other than her dad is not being there, but she has other dad. So she's very cushioned, where Faith has all of the same difficulties to deal with, but she's an orphan. She watched her Watcher die, and she was never accepted by the crew, and then did what she had to do to survive, and also experienced a lot of loss. Like, yeah, she went to the mayor and the mayor was evil, but then the mayor died and she again had no one. That was like her person.
And she's also much in the way I think Buffy uses Willow, she's there when they need help. Like, they only call in Faith when it's something dirty that Buffy can't do. Which, again, coded as black women saving everybody, right?
They call in Faith to make the mistakes too, exactly. To make the bad calls, so that Buffy can be glorified.
Yeah, so like, again, spoiler, season 7. So there's a fight in which Buffy goes down, and they have the scythe. Yeah, it's a magical thing that I'm not sure why we didn't know about it seasons before, but whatever. And she doesn't, and at this point there's like a bunch of potentials, right? I think they might be potentials, whatever. Anyway, Buffy goes down, and they're in a really bad spot, and it's clearly taking some viciousness to get out of it. She passes the scythe to Faith, and I'm like, in the end, you're calling on Faith to get y'all through the hard part. Cool. Great.
Yeah. Well, like, Buffy almost dies, right? She gets stabbed by somebody. She gets stabbed in the stomach, and then so she thinks she's gonna die, and she passes it on to Faith.
Yeah.
But
like the backup plan is Faith.
It's Faith. Yeah.
Like
The
our
backup
main
plan is Faith.
plan is Willow, our backup plan is Faith. And like I
It's
feel like
Faith,
that's
yeah.
the theme throughout the whole series, but
Mhm.
that specific episode, it was like literally your plan is Willow and your literal backup plan is Faith.
Yeah. And even in dating Principal Wood, like they kind of have some kind of chemistry at the beginning, Buffy and Principal Wood, and they like go on this date, and she's like, I don't know, is it a date? Is it not a date? And then it obviously Buffy can't date a black man. Are you kidding me? But Faith can, and Faith does.
Yeah.
Right? Can't watch Buffy have sex with a black man. Let's watch Faith have sex with a black man.
Yep. Like it was
great question, Diana. I don't know why nobody got Faith out of jail. Like, duh.
Because she is black and she did a bad thing and must be punished.
Exactly. And exactly.
She's black, did the bad thing, must
yeah.
Like, Buffy has done some questionable things, a lot of property damage, a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I also very specifically think we need to talk about the fact that Buffy like essentially put Faith in a coma to save her boyfriend. Like, and we never discussed the moral issues around that. We never talked, like, you put her in a coma. Yes, Angel is the only one who had respect for Faith.
Is so thin. Their patience.
It's not even thin. They have none.
Anything. They know. You're right.
Yeah, and so somebody said like Angel is the only one that respects Faith, and that is absolutely true. And so like they do a very stereotypical thing in that show, in Angel with Faith that like is technically offensive, but because Angel has so much respect for Faith, I'm actually kind of okay with the fact that like it wasn't the best choice. They call her in for something and it's like, this is probably a little problematic because she's coded as black, but because like you know that Angel has her back.
Yeah, Angel does actually have her back. Yeah, Angel does for real want her to like get better, like whatever. It's like into rehabilitation. Whatever.
Like, they have their own little buddy cop adventures.
Yeah,
like
they're like, oh, we're evil together. I don't know, whatever. I don't even.
They're flawed humans who have learned to live with being flawed.
Yeah.
In a way that nobody in the buffering verse. Like, you must be good. You must like. It's like Black Widow. You have to like clear your ledger, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Angel and Co are like, like Angel. Yeah. Angel is the show where all of the morally questionable people go to like fight the good fight.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so right.
That's really what that is. So we covered our Jewish questions. We covered our.
A bunch of people have messaged us saying that I didn't know that this was a fact anyway when Mack told me that Tara was supposed to come back, but I've seen all of these comments just saying that Tara coming back was a cover story to save face. And Emma Benson said that the story was news to her, and it was said in interviews in a carefully worded way that the possibility was never an option presented to her.
I mean, that sounds like Joss.
Yeah, she was told about coming back as the first. Remember we talked? We had a conversation about this, that she was to come back as the first, and then she refused, and maybe something else, and then they gave Amber the fall for not coming back. Classic. That sounds accurate.
Oh, that's rude. Yes, the Angel and Faith comics are amazing. Yes. Yeah. Definitely check those out.
I'm gonna check those out. I haven't seen those.
But are there like any other questions? I think we actually managed to cover all of our points and all of the questions that were submitted.
Yeah,
in some way, shape, or form. So.
Yeah. Hopefully
like right on time.
For Srishti, we want to get more input and voices in, and it's a process. We're getting there, and we'll hopefully have more perspectives as the seasons go on. So bear with us. And this was really fun. Thanks everybody for being here. This is a good time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to like see that a lot of you had like pulled out some of the same stuff that we did, which I think was really, really great.
Yeah. This is great. Yeah. And thank you guys for your participation and putting in the questions in the feed and just showing up.
Thanks, y'all. Have a really, really great, some of you night because you're in other countries, some of you day because you're in other countries. Stay warm, except for West Africa. You stay cool because you're 80 degrees.
Yeah, somebody said they're like 80 degrees. Like, you go have a good day. You just be grateful. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.